Content carried in here is suitable for general family viewing.
Hardy Presbyterian School in Kiambu County. Therefore, I would like take this opportunity to welcome you to our class today. I would like to take this opportunity to welcome and keep our class. And we start on discussing on science, class 8. And before we start on that, I'll just comment about science. It's one of the major subjects and very important to us as human beings and also animals. Now, it assists us understand the real concepts in life. Therefore, you must love science. For me, I love science. I don't know of you. Do you love science? Now, science, for you to perform well in science, remember it's a chain. Therefore, it has to it performs as a chain right from class 1 to class 8. So as you revise for your final exams, do not forget what you learned in class 1, because science starts from class 1 to class 8. So we cannot leave anything behind. We have to carry up from class 1 to class 8. And therefore, I'm going to review briefly on some of the areas that you covered. I know if I ask majority of you to remind me of some of the things that they learned in class 1, now you are much concentrating on class 8 work, class 7 work, and class 6 work. But you find that majority of us have forgotten what we learned in class 1, what we learned in class 2, what we learned in class 3, and what we learned in class 4 and 5. So much of our effort, we put them in class 4, and class 5, 6, 7, and 8. We forgot the lower classes, and that's why now we start failing the exam. So and also comment about it as we revise our science. It's always good to stick again to our syllabus. What the syllabus gives us to learn in class is what by the end of the day Kenya National Examination Council will test. Therefore, without wasting time, let's move on and look at review some of the work that has been covered in lower classes, because as I've said, science has to be set from class 1 to class 8. And they like emphasizing on those lower classes because they know as you revise, most of your work or your efforts are being emphasized in the class 7, 8 work. Therefore, in class 1, you talked about, so before I start, I'll have to write the board. Here, I'm taking you through science, class 8. Class 8. The topic is animals. The topic is animals. Before I even introduce what we are supposed to learn in class 8, I would like to talk about animals. Animals is a very wide topic covering a lot of work right from standard 1 to class 8. And therefore, it's learned in every class. So I like to start from class 1, what was covered under animals in class 1. This was purely external parts of the big animals. And these parts includes things like the eye, the ears. We also have nose, legs, and so forth. That is what we covered in class 1. That's the ear, the mouth, the eye, the nose, the legs, the tail, and the horn. Then from there, I'll move now to class 2. I'll move on to class 2 work, which we covered another subtopic still under animals, which is animals kept at home. Animals kept at home. If, for example, now I ask a candidate in class, may it not give me a very good example of an animal kept at home, maybe, because he sees that one as a very simple thing. Then also, you also discussed about wild animals. Wild animals. A good example of a wild animal there, you can give us a lion. Still, and class 8, in class 2, we discussed about useful animals. Useful animals. As we talk about useful animals, these are animals that are very important to us. They provide us with different things, and they are so useful even at home. Such a good example is a cattle, goats, cats, and a dog. When it comes to a dog, most people confuse it in the next subtopic I'm going to discuss. I'm going to give you that was covered in class 2, which we call it harmful animals. Harmful animals. Harmful animals. Harmful animals. These we can also term them as dangerous animals, and therefore they include good examples such as a snake, mosquitoes, rats, termites, tick, and a flea. So most of the people will confuse a dog, which is a useful animal, which we keep it at home, whereby they categorize it as a what? As a harmful animal. And I would like to say a dog is not an harmful animal, but a very useful animal at home. It provides security and protection. And also others are kept as pets in our homes. Then from there, that is about, before I leave class 2, majorly, as they said, the exams, they base so much on harmful animals. Harmful animals. They'll test you and ask you which of the following is an example of an harmful animal. Therefore, you should be able to know. That is one of the areas where KCPE will pick a question from. Standard 3, which is the current grade 3 in the new education system, we talked about behavior of small animals. Behavior of small animals, which is attached to, when we talk about behavior here, we'll talk about two major things. We'll talk about the movement. When we talk about the movement, we have animals move from one place to another in different ways, such as walking, flying, crawling, swimming, hopping, or leaping. Very good example of that, of an animal that moves by hopping or leaping. Here you can get a very good example as a cricket, grasshoppers, and so forth. That is what was covered in class 3. Also under that, still under animals class 3, after talking about the movement, that's the behavior. You also talked about under behavior, the protection of animals, how they protect themselves from their predators. And this includes some of the small animals will protect themselves by coiling. If you touch them, a very good example, we have the millipede. Then others will run off. Then they see the predator, they'll run off. Others hide in the shells, biting and flying, and then flying off. The other difference between flying off and flying. Flying is a form of movement. It's a type of movement. Flying is a type of movement. Flying off, now animals move in fear as a form of protection, as they move from one particular area to another, as they protect themselves from a danger. Then we also have now under still class 3, the next subtopic which was covered there was care of animals at home. How do we care for small animals that we keep at home, or even any other animal that we keep at home? This one includes This one includes ways of caring for animals at home, such as watering. We need to water them, give them water. We also need to feed them. That is, we have to give them food. We also need to house them. That is providing shelter. These are the right ways in which we protect our animals that we keep at home. Then from there, we also discussed, from there, now that was all about class 3. Class 3, that's the behavior of small animals by movement and protection, and then care of small animals as small animals kept at home, how we take care of those small animals. Those are some of the areas that are majorly also touched in the syllabus, and therefore, as you prepare and revise for your KCP, it's always good to revisit them. Do not look down upon them. Then we also have class 4. Now, from class 3, class 4, you are introduced to a subtopic, characteristics of animals. Characteristics of animals. When I talk about the characteristics of animals, here we are referring to the features, characteristics of animals. Characteristics of animals. This one refers now to the features that animals have to have so that they can attach themselves into their environments. And they include such as feeding. Animals feed. They move from one place to another. We shall see that one as later as we continue. They remove wastes. They grow, that is, they reproduce, they react to changes in the environment, and also, they react also to the changes in the environment. Those are some of the characteristics, and they are the ones that are attached to the syllabus. So anytime they ask you to give a characteristic of animal, then they always base their argument on those characteristics that I've listed there. Then, still in class 4, there is what we call farm animals and their products. Farm animals and their products. The farm animals that we keep there and what they give. We have such animals. We have poultry, which gives us, we have different types of poultry there kept at home. We have the layers and the broilers. Then we also have the cattle. Let me erase this. We also have the cattle, which gives us beef and milk. That is the product, beef and milk. We also have the sheep. The sheep, which gives us wool and mutton. Sheep gives us wool and mutton. Then we have the goat, which gives us milk. We also get more hair and mutton. I'll emphasize on these two, on a sheep, on a goat, because most of the students also will confuse that. You find that if they are told to give the product given by a sheep, others will even confuse and say that a sheep will give us milk. But a sheep does not give us milk, it gives us only wool and mutton. Also, when it comes to goats, we get 3 of them that now give us the milk, more hair, and mutton. So you should get the difference that a sheep does not give us milk, but a goat and a cattle will give us milk in the same way. Then, those are the farm animals and their products. Those are the farm animals and their products. Then from there, now we'll get into class 5 work. Class 5 work very fast. Classification of animals. Classification of animals. Under these, now we talk about animals being classified into 2 classes. That is vertebrates and invertebrates. Vertebrates and invertebrates. So when we talk about vertebrates, we refer to those animals that have a backbone. Then we also have the invertebrates, which are the animals that do not have a backbone. the animals that do not have a backbone. So that is what was discussed, or what you discussed in class 5. That is animals with a backbone. Good example there. There are 5 classes. We have the mammals, we have the reptiles, we have the fish, we have the birds and the amphibians. Then the invertebrates, we have animals without a backbone, which includes the insects, the ticks, the spiders, the mites, and the slug. Those are animals without a backbone. We move on, still in class 5. After class 5, after classification of animals, now we get to class 6, which we discussed about animal feeding. In class 5, we discussed about animal feeding. Can you share that clip? We have this, which includes pasture, fodder, concentrates, and conserved feeds. Those are the animal feeds. We have the pasture, fodder, still, and we have concentrates, and conserved feeds. Conserved feeds. Now, when I'll talk much about the conserved feeds, I'll emphasize on the conserved feeds, which exists in two forms, which is the hay and the silage. Remember, the hay is conserved when dry, and the silage is conserved in a special structure known as the silo when still green. So we have the hay and the silage as under conserved feeds, which are still animal feeds. Then in class 7, we discussed about before we get to class 7, we have class 6. After the animal feeds, we discussed about the methods of grazing, which is a very common area by you get a question there. You're likely to get a question when it comes to KCP about the methods of grazing. Methods of grazing. Methods of grazing, we have 3 of them. We have rotational method of grazing. We have zero grazing, which is also called stall feeding. Then we have the third one as herding. Herding is another method of grazing, whereby under now rotational grazing, under the rotational grazing is again grouped into 3. Rotational grazing is again grouped into 3. That is what we have. We have the tethering, the paddocking, and strip grazing. Then, still in class 7, you discussed finally on constitutes of a balanced diet. Now, animals, as human beings need a balanced diet, animals still require a balanced diet. And this balanced diet in animals is composed of carbohydrates, proteins, vitamins and oils, fats and oils, minerals, vitamins, and water. Then in class 7, you also discussed about the parasites, animal parasites. These are the internal parasites and the external parasites. Good example of an internal parasite, we have the roundworms. Then external parasites, we can get tsetse flies. Then effects on livestock still was a subtopic in class 7, which includes the following: poor health, anemia, irritation, poor quality products. Then we also talked about now having those parasites with animals, still there is control of livestock parasites. Still in class 7, we have the control of livestock parasites. We have several methods of controlling those parasites that were discussed in that class. Rotational grazing, which controls both internal and external parasites. It's a very common question. Which of the following methods will control both internal and external parasites? That goes for rotational grazing. Then we have spraying which now this majorly controls the external parasites. This controls majorly the external parasites. Then we also have dipping, which also controls external parasites such as tick. Then we have deworming, which majorly now controls the internal parasites. Remember, in the deworming, we also discussed about the two ways in which you carry out the deworming. We have the use of a bolus gun and the dredging gun, which the bolus gun will give a solid medicine, while the dredging gun gives a solid medicine. Then a liquid medicine, I mean. Then we also looked about methods of controlling human intestinal worms. Methods of controlling human intestinal worms. Good example of an intestinal worm, we have the human intestinal worm, we have the tapeworms. So we have several methods that we also discussed in class 7. We have proper sanitation, that is cleanness. Cleanness, proper sanitation. We also have proper washing of foods that are eaten raw. Then we also have the third one, which is proper cooking of food. Proper cooking of food. Then we refer to the third one, which is regular deworming. Regular deworming. You make sure that you deworm regularly. So that's much what was covered in class 7, and we cannot when you are discussing the topic animals, we cannot leave all that. Whatever we have highlighted right from class 1, which is the grade 1 to grade 7 or class 7 behind, because as the KCP is always set based on right from the syllabus and then based from the lower classes, that is from class 1 to class 8. We cannot leave that behind. So candidates, as you prepare for your exams, as you revise all through, do not forget much of class 1, class 2. Don't say those are too low classes. I don't think whether an exam can come from there. Yes, you have all the time to revise all through that. So now allow me to take you now through what I was to present today's class, which is now class 8 work, still animals. And animals in class 8, here we are going to discuss about, let me clear this. Now we are done with this. Now in class 8, animals, we are going to discuss adaptations, of animals. That is a subtopic. The topic is animals. The subtopic in class 8 is adaptations of animals. And analyze, kindly by director, share that slide on class 8. I'll last by discussing the objectives, because as you answer the questions in the KCP, they are directly picked from the objectives. So if you know the objectives, then you therefore get the good marks by the end of the year. So objective number 1, as you go through the class, you should be able to tell by the end of the lesson, explain how animals adapt to different environments. Number 2, identify signs of ill health in livestock. Then you'll also be able to state effects of ill health in animals. Now, before I start, I would like also to define what is an adaptation. Before we start, I would like us to know and understand what is an adaptation. And I'll define it here. You can simply say an adaptation. They are what? These are adjustments, or you can call them mechanisms. They are mechanisms in which an animal uses to fit in its environment. Even we as human beings, we have mechanisms. We have adaptations depending on different areas that we live in. So the mechanism, the adjustment that you have or as an animal to live in that particular environment, therefore, that is referred as an adaptation. That is referred as an adaptation. Therefore, now that one takes us direct now to feeding habits in different animals, and we are going to start feeding adaptation. The next subtopic will take us to feeding adaptations in mammals, feeding adaptations in mammals. And you'll know that mammals are categorized into three major classes. Kindly share. That is the herbivores, omnivores, and carnivores. And now we are looking at the feeding. We are looking at the feeding. So the feeding adaptation in mammals, we have the mammals categorized into three classes depending on the feeding habits. We have the herbivores, the omnivores, and the carnivores. The herbivores, these are animals that feed. The herbivores, they feed on vegetables or plants. The omnivores, they feed on both vegetables and flesh. Then the carnivores will feed on flesh only. Those are the three classes. Therefore, we are going to discuss them depending on how they feed on different types of foods. We have these ones that are feeding on the vegetables, and the flesh. Then those ones that feed on the flesh only. Now we are going to start direct with the feeding adaptations in omnivores, because I would like Mark to be discussed on carnivores because that's before. So let's start with the feeding adaptations in omnivores. Kindly, my director, share that. We have the feeding adaptation in omnivores, and this one will start talking about the teeth. They have four basic types of teeth. That is the incisors, canines, premolars, and molars. That is, the canines, the incisors will assist in biting and cutting. The incisors will tear flesh. The premolars and molars are used for crushing, grinding, and also chewing. They also adapted by having two sets of teeth in their lifetime. That is the first set called the milk teeth. Then we also have the second set known as the permanent set. The milk teeth, they grow, then they shed off after a period of time. Then now they get the permanent teeth. Those are just simply about the omnivores. As I said, we are not going to base much on omnivores. I would like us to discuss much on the adaptations in herbivores. Now, when we talk about the herbivores, a very good example here, we are going to use we can get a good example is a sheep. A very good example is a sheep, goats. Adaptations in herbivores, we have the sheep, we have the goats, buffaloes, antelopes, and so forth. Therefore, they can be categorized again into two classes. You can have them as grazers and browsers. As we talk about the grazers, they feed on grass. These ones feed on grass purely, such as cattle. Then browsers, they feed on twigs and soft part of the leaves, e.g. the antelopes, the giraffes, and so forth. Therefore, the adaptations that enables them to feed very well on the different types of feeds. We'll have number one. Kindly, my director, share that. The adaptations, the table. We have the honey pads. They have a honey pad. The honey pad helps in holding tightly grass, that is the food, tightly against the incisors. As they cut, they hold the grass, then the incisors will be used for cutting. So they have a horny pad. Then we also have number 2, adaptation number 2, they have a diastema. They have a diastema. What is a diastema? A diastema is that toothless gap between the incisors and the molars. The incisors and the molars. And its main function, a very common question, is for turning vegetables or food as the animal chews, and this one ensures proper chewing of the food. I'd like to repeat about diastema. It assists in turning the foods, and that is to ensure proper chewing. Then we also have the next one. They have incisors, and the work of the incisors is that you don't do cutting. They are incisors on the lower and the lower jaw. That is, remember the upper part. We are going to have the diagram. The upper part is made up of a horny pad. Then the lower jaw has some incisors which are used for cutting the grass. They are biting, holding, nibbling, and cutting of food. They still have molars and premolars present in both jaws. That is the lower and the upper jaw. You can easily see the horny part there, and the diastema, the toothless gap. Then after the diastema, that is the toothless gap, we can get the premolars and molars on both jaws. These ones are for grinding, crushing, and chewing of the food the animal has taken. They also have another adaptation which we call continuous replacement of the molars and the premolars. They are continuously replaced every now and then. Remember, as these animals, as they keep on chewing, they keep on chewing all through. Therefore, the molars and the premolars keep on tearing off. Therefore, this assists the animal to replace the worn out parts due to constant grinding of the food materials. Then they also have another adaptation, that is that they have a long and rough tongue. A long and rough tongue. The tongue is long to reach out and grip grasses from a distance. If you look at a cow or a goat as it grazes, it will try to get the grass from a distance from the mouth. So that is an adaptation to them. Their tongue is long, and that will ensure that the animal gets grass from a distance. The tongue is rough to avoid injuries. Remember, the food that they are chewing it's made up of hard materials, and therefore the tongue has to be rough to avoid the injuries during the chewing and the cutting of the grasses. And those are some of the adaptations in herbivores. We move on to carnivores. As I said, much will be discussed on herbivores and carnivores. Carnivores now, kindly share that. Herbivores, the adaptation number 1, they have sharp and pointed incisors for catching and holding their prey. So as they feed, they have those sharp pointed incisors, the ones that are in front there. They'll assist in holding and the prey in position. Then number 2, they have long pointed and strong canines for tearing off pieces of flesh from the bone. They also penetrate through the flesh and hold, therefore killing their prey. Adaptation number 3, they also have ridged flat premolars and molars which fit well in each other. So if I can have a diagram, a simple diagram of a premolar here, we'll find that a premolar will look like that, with the 2 roots, with the cusps and ridges. All the ridges there. So all the molars and premolars, they have these cusps and ridges. They interlock against each other, as this one will assist the animal in chewing their food. Remember, they are feeding on flesh. They are carnivores. Therefore, meat is a very hard substance. Then they need to chew it properly. Therefore, they have those premolars and molars interlocking one another. We have number 4, adaptation number 4. They have strong scissors-like adapted teeth known as carnassial teeth. Carnassial teeth. A very common question. Carnassial teeth. These ones are majorly used for, carnassial teeth are mainly used for slicing through the flesh and cracking the bones. Slicing through the flesh and cracking the bones. From the diagram, you can well see where we have the carnassial teeth located. Their main work is to slice and crack the bones. Then we also have another adaptation, number 5, which is they have well-spaced teeth. If you look at their jaws, their teeth are well-spaced from one teeth to the next, and this one will assist them from preventing meat from getting stuck in between the teeth. It will prevent the meat from getting stuck in between the teeth. Remember, they are not like human beings. They'll go out there and get a toothpick and remove all that. Therefore, they'll have an adaptation for that to enable them feed well on their food. That is a mouth of a carnivore. That's the mouth of a carnivore. Therefore, you can see the incisors. You can see the premolars and the molars. You can also see the carnassial teeth. Those are some of the few adaptations, or the major ones, that are used in carnivores. So we've talked about the herbivores, about their mouth. We have also discussed about the carnivores, and they are also seen how their mouth is, how it appears. Then let's move now to another case, which are the birds. Now, the birds, they do not have mouth. Birds, they do not have mouth. Therefore, because they do not have mouth, they use their beaks to get their food from different environments. They get their beaks to get their food from different environments that they live in. So birds are categorized. Kindly share, my director. There are different classes of birds. They are categorized into different classes. Kindly share that slide. We have the grain eaters. We have the grain eaters. We have grain eaters. We have grain eaters. These are purely birds that feed on grains. Their major food is their grain. Therefore, because they feed on grains, now we'll talk about their beak. How is their beak adapted to getting grains from the ground or the flour? That is a good example. We have the chicken, we have the doves, we have the turkey, and so forth, river birds and so on. So they have a strong, short, straight, thick beak, which sometimes we also refer to as cone-shaped. Which also sometimes referred as cone-shaped. And therefore, their beak is short because they pick the grains from the ground. They also to collect the grains from the ground. Their claws are also adapted to scratching. Kindly share the diagram on grain eaters. Yes, that is a grain eater. You can look at the beak. It's short, blunt, thick, and strong, and also cone-shaped towards the end. That one will enable them now. Thank you. Will enable them now to pick grains from the ground. Those are grain eaters. The second class of birds we are going to get, we call them flesh eaters. They are called flesh eaters. And the good examples of flesh eaters, they are called flesh eaters. They are also known as the birds of prey because they feed on flesh. Good example, we have the eagles, we have the kites, falcons, and so forth. Now, how are they adapted to feeding? Now, they feed on flesh. Therefore, we describe their beak as short, thick, sharp, and hooked. The beaks are short, thick, sharp, and hooked. And therefore, that one will assist them now to get flesh from the body of their prey, the body of their prey. They also have sharp eyesight for spotting their prey from a distance. Their eyes can see for a very long distance, so that they can spot the prey from a distance and get it from there. They also have very strong, sharp, and curved claws called talons. They have sharp claws known as talons. These ones assist in holding the prey and killing it, and also holding it as they take or they pick the flesh from the body of that particular prey. Then we also have the next class of birds called nectar feeders, called as nectar feeders. Kindly share that slide on nectar feeders. They feed on nectar purely. Examples include the sandbird and the hummingbird. Those are good examples, the sandbird and the hummingbirds. They have a very long, slender, and tight curved beak. And I would like to understand that. Long, slender, slightly curved beak, which is also a bit curved. Now, there is this which will appear like that, very straight, but slightly curved. Long, slender, but slightly curved towards the end. Then, how are they adapted to feeding? That is how by having a long, slender, curved beak. Then from there we get to other types of the other class of birds known as the filter feeders. Can kindly share that. Filter feeders. These birds filter their food from mud. Therefore, they get from muddy places and then they get their food from there. They include ducks, seagulls, swans, geese, and so forth. How are they adapted to feeding? They have a flat, broad, strong, and serrated V-shaped beaks. On top of serrated, this is how it will appear. This is serrated beak. The beak will assist the bird in filtering any food, solid material from the water because they get their food from the muddy places. Kindly you can share the diagram on filter feeders. Yeah, that is the diagram on you can look at the beak. It is serrated. Therefore, that one assists them in filtering solid particles from the food that they get from muddy places. They also have a feet that is webbed. They have a webbed feet. Then very fast, adaptations. Now we move on from feeding. We move and look at adaptations of the same animals now to movement. How are animals adapted to movement? Movements. Now, we get the reason as to why animals move from one place to another. We have to get the reason as to why animals move from one place to another. We have 1, to search for food. 2, to search for shelter. 3, to escape from predators. 4, to search for good climatic conditions. And 5, to seek for mates for reproduction. Adaptation, number 1, to flying. Those animals move by flying. How are they adapted to movement? They, 1, have wings, which have feathers to increase the surface area for flapping against the air. That is it. Then number 2, they have hollow bones. Hollow bones means that they do not have the bone marrow as we have. This one will enable them to be very light as they fly from one place to another. Then 3, they have a streamlined body. This one reduces friction. As the animal gets through the air. That one reduces friction. That is it's a form of a streamlined body. Then we also have now adaptation of animals to hopping and limping. Those ones that hop, good example, we said we have the crickets, we have the grasshoppers, we have the frogs, and so forth. So they have a powerful legs to enable them move forward. 2, some have short forelegs and strong legs. Good example, you have the kangaroos for that case. They have very strong forelegs and legs for jumping from one place to another. Then some also have tails for balancing. They have the tails for balancing, like the birds. Like the kangaroos and the birds also. They also include good examples there we had given. We have the grasshoppers, the orcas, the kangaroos, and so forth. So those are the adaptations to animals to hopping and limping as they move from one place to another. Then, after we have seen the movement of animals as they move from one place with those specific adaptations or mechanisms, now let's look at animals also get sick. What are some of the signs that you look at your animal and identify that that animal is sick? Kindly you can share that. Signs of ill health in livestock. Signs of ill health in livestock. Kindly share that. Number one, we have standard growth. That is, the animal stops to growing at a particular age compared to other animals that they were born the same time. That is a sign. Number two, loss of weight. That is another sign. Number three, we have reduced yields. Reduced yields. And when we talk about reduced yields here, here we are talking about when it comes maybe to production. Reduced yields is a sign, is a case whereby most of the students confuse this. If you talk about reduced yields, we mean if a cow was producing 10 liters, she has gone to 8 liters, to 6 liters, and also 4 liters to a constant. So this one is a reducing, that one it reduces the production. Therefore, it's a sign. Then we also have coughing, animals cough, blood and worms in the stool, and also in the animal looks inactive. Very fast, let's look at the effects of livestock diseases. Now, we have talked about the signs. Let us now look at the effects. Effect number one, we have lower yields. Lower yields. Pupils confuse between lower yields and reduced yields. When talk about reduced yield, I've said simply, this refers in terms of the production. If the cow, for example, is giving you 10 liters of milk, then now all of a sudden start giving you 8, moves to 6, moves to 4, and maybe remains at an optimum production of 2 liters, at optimum of 2 liters. At these parts of 2 liters now, if it is now select at this point of optimum 2 liters, therefore we talk of its lower yields, and therefore that one takes it to be an effect. This is reduced yields. Candidates understand that reduced yields are examples of sign, but lower yields lies and effects. Then from effects, we have the lower quality products. Then we also have diseases. They can transform diseases to the consumers. They can transmit diseases to the consumers. If you feed on that meat of a animal that was sick, then we as human beings can get the same disease. Then finally, we can cause death to the animal. Simply can cause death to the animal. If the animal is not treated, then it can cause death to that particular animal. And because of time, candidates, I hope you are together. We are moving together. And up to that point, that's what much supposed to be covered in class 8. So, I understand that it is not that fast. Other points you can also read and analyze and revise much on them. Majorly on the signs and effects. As I gave when I was introduced the lesson, the objectives. The objective of the lesson is to be able to state the effects, be able to state the signs, and also tell how different animals are adapted to movement and feeding. Now, up to that point, if you have any question, you can channel them through the number appearing on your screen. We'll be very happy and be able to handle that. Now, let me take you now to KCP sample questions. very few of them here. We can see some of the questions that were tested. Kindly you can share on that, my director. KCP sample questions on that particular topic. 2022, question number 21. I'll read. The diagram below represents a part of a certain bird. The bird is likely to feed on. This maybe the bird had such a beak. The beak is straight, not curved. Therefore, the right answer here, candidates, was supposed to be this bird feeds on fish. For the nectar feeders, that's why I want to get the difference. When it comes to nectar feeders, their beak will be slightly curved. You must look at the last part of the beak. It's long, it's long, thin, and slightly curved towards the end. This one is long, thin, and straight towards the end. Therefore, this one feeds much on fish, but this one is a nectar feeder. Our next question is 2020, number 44. Which of the following is an adaptation for hopping and limping in animals? That is, they have long and long and strong legs, streamlined bodies, short and muscular legs. More weight on the front legs. The right answer is supposed to be long and strong legs. Animals that are adapted to hopping and limping. Then we have 2019 as the last one I read. The following are adaptation for feeding in herbivores. Which of two are for turning food in the mouth? The right choice there is like to be choice B, which says they have rough, tough presence of diastema. Candidates, you can also look at other questions that I've listed down there as sample questions in different years, 2018, 2016, down there, and revise. Thank you so much for having me in class. Any question is welcome through the number on the screen and also through the education program in KUTV, and we'll be able to attend to them anytime we get them. That is the end of my presentation today, candidates. I wish you well as you prepare for your KCP. Revise right from class 1 and up to class 8, and definitely you'll have to get good results by the end of the year. Thank you so much.